Presidential candidates in Peru are closing their campaigns ahead of Sunday's election, and we'll tell you why protest action marked the past day in Caracas. My name is Reagan. Vignes. This is from the South. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin with the presidential candidates in Peru who are closing their campaigns ahead of Sunday's elections. Candidate Pedro Pablo Kuczynski held his closing rally in Lima. Keiko Fujimori and Veronica Mendoza will close their campaigns tonight. The latest polls show that Fujimori is leading but will not have enough support to win on the first round. Meanwhile, Mendoza and Kuczynski are virtually tied in second place. However, the left-wing broad front of Mendoza has surged surprisingly in polls. Our correspondent in Lima, Rael Mora, filed this report on exactly who Mendoza is and what her proposals are.
Among the 5 candidates that lead in the presidential polls, Veronica Mendoza is the only one that proposes to put an end to the neoliberal model. She's an educator, born and raised in the city of Cusco, the ancestral capital of the Incas. She speaks the native language, Quechua. She became involved politically in the Nationalist Party of current President Ollanta Humala and was elected congresswoman. However, she was the first to resign from the ruling party.
While the nationalist leadership betrayed the people, did completely the opposite of what they offered the people, we have demonstrated with our trajectory that we remain coherent and committed to our principles and our proposals. That is the big difference.
After leaving the party, Mendoza joined leftist forces in Congress and eventually helped to form the coalition Frente Amplio. She ran in the primaries of Frente Amplio and won the presidential candidacy. She has a consistent, progressive and uncompromising stand on all issues and promises radical changes to the neoliberal economic model. She has committed to breaking Peru's dependency on primary exports, securing universal health services, pension plans and education, and protecting the environment. She also supports same-sex marriage, abortion and the legalization of marijuana, along with a change of the constitution.
We want radical changes because for some things we have to be radical. We need courage to combat corruption, embedded like it is today at all levels of the state. We need bravery, firm and clear, and we have that. That is why we're pushing for this constitutional change hand in hand with the people.
Mendoza's support comes largely from southern Peru and the less wealthy, and rural areas where other candidates' approval have stalled. She has surged in the polls since the beginning of January and is roughly neck and neck with the second-place candidate, with 15% approval. If she reaches the second round, it is possible that the movements that reject the leading candidate, Keiko Fujimori, could come together to propel Mendoza into the presidency. Rael Mora, teleSur, Peru.
The Venezuelan opposition is trying to speed up its efforts to oust President Nicolas Maduro. Opposition leaders and supporters rallied outside the National Electoral Council to demand that authorities modify the current referendum conditions, which would allow the opposition to speed up an impeachment referendum. The opposition says it will deliver the needed signatures by the set June deadline. However, critics believe they are pushing for more flexible rules because they lack the needed support. And thousands of government supporters also came out to the streets to show their support for the president and to reject the opposition's strategies to oust the government. There were isolated cases of violence between the two sides. And the Venezuelan opposition-led parliament has also approved a controversial amnesty bill. Thousands have joined the campaign to repeal the law. Our correspondent Ian Bruce has more from Caracas.
We're outside the presidential palace of Miraflores, where President Maduro has now agreed to send the amnesty law passed by the Opposition National Assembly to the Supreme Court to decide whether or not it's constitutional. At the end of the march, about 1,000 protesters were led into the gardens here. President Maduro listened to representatives of the families of the victims of the violence in 2014. He received a document, 2.5 million signatures, or a list of the 2.5 million signatures collected in 2 days, requesting that that be done. He's agreed to do it, and it's very likely that the Supreme Court will indeed, in the coming days, declare the law unconstitutional. But one thing that's clear from today's demonstration is that this is less of a constitutional and a legal struggle than a political one. Most people here see the amnesty law passed by the Assembly as one piece in the opposition's drive to get rid of this government, and they're determined not to let that happen. Ian Bruce, teleSur's, Caracas.
Thanks, Ian. President Dilma Rousseff has called for Brazilian society to create a new grand pact. The president says that she aims at unifying the country amid the current political crisis. The head of state also promised to launch an ambitious set of political reforms. Rousseff also reminded her supporters that the popular will, which placed her in power, must be defended. And in neighboring Argentina, President Mauricio Macri is in trouble. Attorney Federico Delgado has launched an investigation on the head of state over evidence that emerged this week after the release of the Panama Papers. Macri appears as part of an offshore society based in the Bahamas, an island that is considered a tax haven. And as Panama receives criticism for its tax policies, President Juan Carlos Varela has responded by launching an expert commission to carry reforms necessary to improve its tax regulation system. The decision was made after the OECD group of nations harshly criticized the Panamanian government.
The government of Panama, through our foreign ministry, will create an independent committee of national and international experts whose expertise is established to evaluate our practices and offer the adoption of measures that we will share with other countries in the world.
Military police member Hugo Alcalde announced today that he will marry his partner. The announcement was met with celebration by the LGBTIQ community, since the military has not historically been a place where gays could admit their sexuality. A group of international forensics experts appointed by the Organization of American States last year has decided to stop working with the Mexican government. The group, which was investigating the disappearance of 43 students from Ayotzinapa, said it was impossible to continue cooperating with the government since it refuses to provide results needed to determine what happened. The experts say the government has decided to stand by a widely questioned theory and will not investigate further. Mexican authorities have launched a high alert due to the increased activity of volcano Popocatépetl. The volcano has been active since 1994, and experts fear that a lava buildup could generate a large explosion. The state of Mexico and Mexico City are on standby in case the volcano explodes. The last hearings took place in the case of the murder of Argentine singer Facundo Cabral. The singer was killed in Guatemala in 2011. The Attorney General's office is asking for 86 years in prison for Costa Rican criminal Alejandro El Paledejo Jimenez, who investigations have found to be the mastermind behind the crime. Islamic State group fighters have kidnapped 300 cement workers in an area northeast of Damascus, Syria. The kidnapping came as part of recent assaults against Syrian government forces in the area. The kidnapped victims are workers and contractors of Al Badia Cement Company. According to the industry ministry, their employer has lost all contact with them. British Prime Minister David Cameron has admitted to having shares in an offshore trust set up by his late father. Cameron's admission comes 5 days after the Panama Papers were leaked. The British Prime Minister said he sold the 5,000 shares he owned back in 2010 for $42,000. Cameron stated he paid all UK taxes due on the profits he made from the sale of the shares. He added that he had, quote, nothing to hide. Russian President Vladimir Putin has denied, quote, any element of corruption over the Panama Papers leak. Speaking for the first time since the leak, Putin said that his opponents are trying to destabilize Russia. The papers reveal that a number of offshore companies are owned by close associates of his. They suggest the companies may have been used for money laundering. Iceland has sworn in Sigurdur Ingi Johannesson as the new Prime Minister, with early elections to be held in the autumn. Johansson's appointment comes after mass protests pushed the former Prime Minister to quit over a hidden offshore account that was revealed in the Panama Papers leak. The race to become the Democratic Party presidential candidate in the United States is heating up. This is causing tensions to rise between the two candidates, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, with both saying that the other is not qualified for the position of Commander-in-Chief of the United States.
And she has been saying lately that she thinks that I am, quote unquote, not qualified to be president. Well, let me just say in response to Secretary Clinton, I don't believe that she is qualified. If she is through her super PAC taking tens of millions of dollars in special interest funds.
Well, it's kind of a silly thing to say, but I'm going to trust the voters of New York who know me and have voted for me 3 times, twice for Senate, once in the presidential primary. Look, I don't know why he's saying that, but I will take Bernie Sanders over Donald Trump or Ted Cruz anytime.
Belgian prosecutors have released new footage of the key surviving Brussels airport attack suspect. The footage shows the route used by the bomber after the attack on March 22nd. Belgian prosecutors have appealed to the public for help in finding the suspect. They're also eager to find a coat that he had discarded and to speak with the people who saw him on his hour-long walk back into the city. Pope Francis will visit the Greek island of Lesbos on April 16th to meet with refugees there. The Vatican said that the Pope had been invited to Lesbos by the Eastern Orthodox Patriarch Bartholomew I. The Pope has repeatedly spoken out in support of refugees and has urged Roman Catholic churches around Europe to take in migrant families. And still on the topic of refugees in Greece, where on the island of Idomeni, police clashed with refugees who were stranded in a makeshift camp there. The refugees attempted to tear down a fence bordering Greece and Macedonia. Spain's socialist far-left party Podemos and centrist upstart Ciudadanos kicked off their first 3-way coalition talks earlier today. The political parties are trying to put aside their differences as the deadline to form a new government approaches. If no power-sharing agreement is found by May 2nd, new elections will be called. The Israeli military has tripled its demolitions of Palestinian-owned structures in the occupied territories over the past 3 months. This is according to a report by the United Nations. The report on demolitions has alarmed diplomats and human rights groups over what they regard as a sustained violation of international law.
Policy employed by the Israeli civil administration in the West Bank is a clear policy of restricting Palestinian existence, Palestinian communities from growing and expanding and developing according to their needs in the interest of expanding and growing settlement.
And handicapped athletes in Gaza participate in a sports competition despite the shortages and difficulties. More on this story with Noha Razin.
The Al Jazeera local sports club in eastern Gaza City organized a sports competition entitled Miles of Smiles for Palestinian handicapped athletes Thursday morning. The competitors are mostly amputees who lost limbs during Israeli attacks. Many of them have won medals in volleyball, javelin, and other sports and competitions abroad for disabled people. The director of the club, Mr. Ali Al-Nazdi, says that the event aims to break the siege imposed on sports in Gaza.
This event was organized by the Al Jazeera Club. It aims to shed light on the blockade imposed on sports and athletes in the Gaza Strip, and particularly for handicapped athletes. Our Palestinian disabled athletes have not participated in any championships abroad since 2012 as a result of the blockade imposed on the Gaza Strip.
The sports sector in Gaza has been hit hard under the Israeli blockade and after 3 deadly wars. Handicapped athletes have potential, but they face many obstacles such as the lack of equipment, facilities, funding, training and restrictions in movement due to closed border crossings. Some sports facilities in the Gaza Strip, including the Al Jazeera Club, were targeted during the Israeli war on Gaza in November 2012. According to the Palestinian Central Bureau for Statistics, there are about 40,000 handicapped people in Gaza Strip, including over 1,000 athletes. Many NGOs in Gaza support the disabled by offering them psychological support and creating opportunities to help them integrate into their community. Noha Razin, teleSur's TV, Gaza.
Brazilian troops launched a series of security exercises with a focus on anti-terrorism security for the upcoming 2016 Rio Olympics on Wednesday. The Rio drills are part of a larger anti-terrorism training program ordered by Brazilian authorities following last month's Brussels bombings. Dozens of police officers and firefighters are taking part in the drills with helicopter exercises run by Brazilian Special Forces. It's being presumed that the first folio of playwright William Shakespeare has been discovered in the collection of an historic house on a Scottish island. The collection is nearly 400 years old and brings the number of known surviving first folios to 234. It has an estimated value of up to $3.5 million. For more of these and other stories, you can visit our website, telesurtv.net/English, and you can feel free to join us on Instagram, Facebook, and on Twitter. From all of us here at teleSur, have a great evening. Bye.